has 3 ships. The Japanese have 4 right now. And it goes and just simply puts its ships in between where the whales are. So in other words, you can't harpoon a whale if there's this ship in between. I mean, I guess they could try. They have, shot their harpoons right at people who have ducked. Luckily, in the 33 years of Sea Shepherd, nobody has been injured, nobody's died, but it's not for the lack of the Japanese trying to kill them. I mean, the Japanese have tried to kill them. Last year, they cut in half the Addy gill, which was this interesting trimaran that had gone around the world. And if you see the videos about it, you realize how crazy propaganda is, because you can see the boat. Ship. It's in the water. It's barely moving because they're low on fuel, and the ship is coming along, and it veers to the right and slices it over. It just tries to crush it and tries to drown the crew. And so that the Japanese got away with that just says, wow, these guys they're maniacs.
It's political, though. It's very political. I do want to tell you something that I interviewed somebody several months back, Rosalind Peterson, who has the organization called Agriculture Defense Coalition. And she shared that she has documents that the Navy Weaponry Training Project has the license to decimate ocean life on an unimaginable scale over the next 5 years. They anticipate 2 million takes, which are significant disruptions in essential marine life activities per year, totaling nearly 12 million takes for the period. That means they can destroy whatever is in their way in whatever kind of war experiments that they're doing. And so this is a multifaceted thing that's going on. And I totally appreciate Sea Shepherd and what they're doing. And it breaks my heart what's happening to dolphins as well. But there's trespasses and there's terrible activities that are going on with no consideration to the environment. None. Zero. And that's a whole other side of things that's very difficult to talk about. The Navy having the license to do that. Did you know about that?
No.
Yeah. So anyway, please continue about Sea Shepherd. I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, I think what I know from setting up with Lawrence DeCroat, the Sea Shepherd Ideas and Innovation page, that there are a lot of people out there who feel very passionate about not pretending you're doing science research when you're just killing whales. There's no real serious market for this. It's just a matter of stubbornness. Japan has been whaling for 800 years.
Right.
They just I think it's more that they want to try to have claim property rights in Antarctica, because Antarctica has at least 50 billion barrels of oil, because nothing about Japan's whaling makes any sense. I mean, the fact that they would, of all the things that they could argue with the United States about, they're arguing about, the United States government should go after Sea Shepherd based on their tax status. All that would mean is that Sea Shepherd would be based in other countries. It wouldn't stop it, because Sea Shepherd has a TV show, and the TV show is showing what Sea Shepherd is doing. It's a reality show. So the people go, oh, wow, you're actually doing something. And the contrast with Greenpeace is enormous. There are 3 Sea Shepherd ships right now playing cat and mouse with the 4 Japanese ships. And Sea Shepherd asked Greenpeace, please send one of your 2 ships down. Please, please, please send them down, because if there's 4 of our ships, and 4 of theirs, we can actually end whaling. As far as Sea Shepherd knows, no whales have been killed this year, which is amazing, because if there's no whales killed, they make no money, and the whole thing is a financial disaster. And the Japanese government just has to add more money to something that's a failure, and that's a failure in the eyes of the public, bringing them shame. So we could actually end 800 years of whaling. We could end it this year if Greenpeace would show up and help to do it, because it's just the numbers. And Greenpeace ignored the request and is having people send origami whales to President Obama, which is just, to me, just kind of silly and pathetic. It's like, but they're pretending that they're working on stopping whaling.
Don't you think that sometimes people in different cultures feel they have a right to continue a practice that has been a longstanding practice, such as whaling in Japan for 800 years, that after a while a culture develops this consciousness that they have the right, it's their terrain, it's their territory, and what they do is their business kind of thinking?
Well, I could defeat that easily with 2 points. Number one, Japan is a signatory to the IWC. Japan has agreed to stop commercial whaling. So Japan made that agreement. So what's there to say? Japan made an agreement. It should withdraw from the treaty if it doesn't agree with it. The second thing is, as far as this, well, we used to do it, so therefore we should do it in the future. Well, people used to do cannibalization. American natives used to count coup and chop off the top of people's heads. I mean, Japanese had samurai who were allowed to kill any peasant who gave them lip. Should we continue with that? Or let's put it on less contentious
I'm not
ground.
saying, by the way, that it's my view. I'm saying that from the Japanese point of view, the fisheries, I'm sure that that's part of the thinking.
But I'm telling you that my point of view is that the Japanese used to have 1G mobile phones and 2G mobile phones. Okay, well, why don't you stay with that? Why don't you stay with those 1G and 2G if you're so interested in keeping your cultural tradition? In other words, you can't be as modern as Japan is, where you're trying to replace humans with robots, and tell me that it's just impossible for you to, modernize your outlook. And this is the thing about completions you talked about before in your intro. In my mind, do you want to have world peace or do you want to have a world at war? I mean, that's pretty much the question. You say, okay, I want peace. I'm working on something I call peace engineering. It's like, well, fine. Okay, if you want peace, then let's look at those things that 98% of the people of the world, or governments representing 98% of the people in the world, or 98% of the nations all agree on. If you're 98% there, why should you be part of the 2% that says we want to do what people want to fight about, and we want to just keep doing it in defiance of the other 98%? So I'll give you two examples of that. One is whaling. The only nations that whale are Japan, Norway, the Faroe Islands, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but the Greenland and the Denmark part of Kingdom of Denmark don't, and Iceland. Okay, great. So, in terms of culture, why should we help the Iceland banks? Why should we buy the Norwegians' oil? I mean, there are things where if the people want to say we want to have one thing, other people can say fine, we'll take the other side of that. But my thought is that anything where 98% of the people agree on, that nations should have the humility to bow to the will of the world. Besides, why would you want to hunt whales to extinction? How does that help your society? The 800 years of whaling come to an end one way or another. It either ends where there's still some whales left, or it ends where there are no whales left. And how does that benefit humanity? And what gives any people the right, to wipe out a species, like just so that they can go and commercially sell it? Now, let's talk about that for just a second. What Japan does with the whales and what it does with the dolphins, it sells it as meat. So do you know anyone doing scientific experiment where autopsy remnants and tissue samples from the scientific research are sold for food? Can you name me any other place in the world that happens?
No.
So it's autopsy remnants. So you're taking these things and you're dissecting them for science. You're not supposed to sell these corpses after you've researched them. It's gross.
Why do they sell them?
They sell them because they want to have an excuse to keep whaling. But the fact is that their freezers are just filling up with more and more and more and more whale meat that nobody wants to eat. You know why? Because it's mercury-laden. The longer that a creature lives, and whales live a really long time, they can live as long as humans, the longer they live, the more mercury they get in their cells because the oceans are toxic. And so humans eating mercury, they can have, something ridiculous. I used to be very conversant with the numbers, but it's hundreds of parts per million of mercury when it's like 0.5 part or 0.4 part per million, like a half a part per million, is the maximum safe dosage according to Japan's own doctors and medical researchers. So why would you want to have something that's hundreds of times more? And it's not like Japan doesn't know what mercury poisoning did. They had this Minamata disease, the ouch disease, which was horrific, a horrific industrial accident. Mercury poisoning is really bad for you. It drives you insane. So there's no reason to eat food that's laden with mercury. It makes no sense. It's not, and to feed this to children at lunch it's really the height of insanity. And people have even gone so far on the Sea Shepherd Ideas and Innovation page to say that it's child abuse. I mean, why can't you take children away from their parents if they're going to feed them poisoned meat? Now, if it's that bad, I mean, how can the government allow it, much less subsidize it?
That's why I said I just think it's perceived as a cultural right, even though it's a wrong.
Well, then how many people are actually eating whale meat in Japan? 1%? 2%?
That's a great question. I'm sure you know that.
But the answer is it's 1% or 2%, or otherwise this meat wouldn't be stocking up in the freezers. I mean, so it's not a cultural thing. It was something that happened that they stopped doing for a while, and then they were desperate for protein after World War II. But Japan hasn't been poor for a very long time. For 2 generations, Japan has not been poor and has been able to import all the meat that it wants. but also the way that they, it's not that they're nice to animals. I mean, look at Kobe beef.